And the Supreme Court is hearing arguments today on the legality of President Trump's tariffs. The Constitution gives Congress the exclusive authority to tax citizens and imports, but it has exceptions giving the president that power during times of national crisis. Now the Supreme Court will need to decide if that exception applies here. If the court strikes down Trump's tariffs, the U.S. could owe businesses tens of billions of dollars in refunds. ABC News senior Washington reporter Devin Dwyer has the details. Hey, Devin.
The justices today are hearing historic arguments over whether President Trump's sweeping global tariffs, the centerpiece of his economic agenda, are illegal. The Constitution gives Congress the power to tax and tariff, but the president argues a 1977 law known as the International Emergency Economic Powers Act delegates some of that power to him. Trump says that persistent trade deficits and inflows of illegal drugs are two major emergencies that he's addressing with tariffs, but a group of states and small businesses sued, saying the president has exceeded his legal authority, that the tariffs are an illegal tax, and that billions of dollars of refunds are owed. Lower courts agreed with the businesses. Legal experts say the fate of Trump's tariffs at the Supreme Court is a toss-up.
Devin Dwyer, thank you. And ABC News legal contributor Kim Wehle is here to break this case down a little bit further for us. So, Kim, what do the justices have to weigh here in deciding whether these tariffs are legal or not?
So as Devin said, this is power that the Constitution gives to Congress, and then Congress in statutes, not just this emergency statute, other statutes, has given power to presidents to negotiate tariffs. The one that Donald Trump is using for these really sweeping global tariffs doesn't have any language in it that actually gives him the power to issue tariffs. It talks about regulating imports. So the court's going to have to decide, does regulating imports mean tariffs? And there's something that has been floating the past few years called the major questions doctrine. And the court was really hard on Joe Biden using the major questions doctrine when it came to COVID, when it came to student loans. They essentially said, listen, you can't kind of find an elephant in a mouse hole, that Congress has to be really clear if you're going to expand presidential power. So in light of that major questions doctrine, this conservative court really should side with the challengers and say, listen, Congress has to decide how much more power Trump gets. But we've seen so many wins for Donald Trump on the shadow docket, Diane. I think it's really going to be a question of not just the power of Donald Trump, the power of the Congress to control tariffs, but whether the court's own legitimacy is going to hold out if in this instance it uses what it was a weapon against Joe Biden's policies to allow a major expansion of the president's authority under a statute that's pretty ambiguous with respect to this kind of power to impose tariffs.
President Trump also issued executive orders declaring an emergency over illegal immigration and drug trafficking. How much can this case impact some others that we're dealing with in wading into just this issue of what meets the bar of a national crisis?
That's really an excellent question, Diane, because the other argument here is that fentanyl isn't, particularly with respect to Canada, it's not an emergency. There's not that much fentanyl that comes from Canada, relatively speaking. This idea that our trade deficit is an emergency, some economists will say, actually, that's a healthy aspect of our in certain context of a government's economy. And as you mentioned, the president is using emergency to expand the belt and suspenders of the presidency. So sure, if we get out of this decision some definition of when is and is not something an emergency, and more particularly, is the president, is his discretion to declare an emergency unlimited? That is there any other part of the government that can second guess his assertion of emergency? If the answer to that question is no, then you're really seeing, again, a massive expansion of unlimited, unaccountable power in one person, which happens to just be Donald Trump today, but could be, any future president if the Supreme Court sides with Donald Trump in this particular case. It's a big case more broadly for the scope of presidential power.
All right, Kim Wehle, always great to have you breaking these down for us. Thank you.